Hello, my friend. My name is Byron, and I'm from the BjjBrick podcast. I want to thank you for checking out the podcast on the YouTube channel here. It's a weekly show dedicated to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and having fun on the mats. Enjoy the show.
Thank you for listening to the BjjBrick podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back, my friends, to the BjjBrick podcast. This is episode 246. It is our extra podcast of the month. I'm excited to bring it to you. I interviewed Jake Fox of Fox Fitness in Wichita, Kansas, and I interviewed Tim Sledd and Roli Delgado. I have on the line with me my good buddies Byron and Gary. How are you guys doing today?
I am doing great. I'm excited about the interviews with Jake, Roli, and Tim. And hey, tell me what those three guys have in common.
They're all going to be in Wichita, Kansas at the end of June. Is that what you're getting at, Gary?
That's what I'm getting at. Yep.
Yeah, so Jake Fox has been helping us out, and he's going to be hosting a BjjBrick event, the Omahalapalooza, as Gary likes to call it. And Roli and Tim will be bringing some knowledge on that Saturday. I believe that's June 23. Does that sound right, guys?
Definitely June 23rd. June 22nd is open mat. And June 24th, don't forget about the barbecue on June 23rd. I mean, everybody likes to eat. And then June 24th, we're going to have a little seminar ourselves.
So, Gary, I asked Tim and Roli about what they'd be teaching, and it was very interesting. What will you and Byron be bringing to the mats on Sunday?
I'm going to teach everybody how to tap out quickly. I'm pretty good at that.
Oh, there is something I can help with.
That's about all I'm good at, but that's what I'm bringing to the mat.
How about you, Byron? You got a particular technique or a position you're going to be showing us?
Well, I'm actually working on writing out a little bit of a curriculum, and that I want to share. I'm working on it, so I don't want to commit to something, but I think the big focus will be techniques that let you enjoy jiu-jitsu more. And if you think about it, there are times when jiu-jitsu kind of sucks, and we'll be avoiding those times, and teaching you how to avoid those times, and then pull out a little bit more enjoyment, and then maybe a couple of my favorite offensive techniques.
When you say offensive, do you mean they're offensive, like offensive moves, or offensive to the room in general and the training partner?
I think you could check both boxes on
okay.
that.
That's all I was checking.
But if you think about it, guys, we have 6 people on today's episode. The 3 of us, and then the 3 people that you interview. All 6 of us will be there at the event. That's pretty cool.
Definitely
Nice.
pretty cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm excited for the opportunity to teach on Sunday. So it's a 3-day event, and I plan on being there all 3 days, and I'm pretty sure Tim Sledd and Roli Delgado also plan on being there all 3 days. So you open mat with Tim Sledd, Roli Delgado, beat up on me and Gary and Joe, and then also Saturday and Sunday. You get all 6 of us. It's looking like. I can't guarantee all of our schedules are perfect all the time, but that's the plan anyway. And man, it's going to be a great weekend. We have off the mat activities as well. A couple different places to eat. I thought it would be kind of interesting to eat at Bricktown. It's like 3 miles from the gym, and it's got the word brick in it. And I've eaten there a couple times. It's really good food. And and I'm thinking maybe on Saturday night, if people are up for it, we'll go out to the comedy club, and maybe even if we're still up and having a good time, go to the Brickyard. It's kind of a evening place. Get to hang out and listen to some live music after the comedy club. So that's. We'll be doing things off the mat. So if you're from out of town, you won't be sitting in your hotel board and then do a couple hours of jiu-jitsu and then go back to the hotel. No, we're at least the way I'm planning it, pretty much full days, full of good times and enough time built in to go and shower and then go meet up and go eat and then go shower and go work out again, shower. And then we're also planning to do a live recording, not like live and the word recording don't really go together, a recording in front of the studio audience. But this is the event, and I guess the reason why we're talking about this is because this is what the interviews revolve around. If you're not coming to the event, I think the interviews are still great because the type of questions Joe is asking, he's really asking questions that are just good for anybody attending a seminar, like how you can get the most out of a seminar. And the odds are you've gone to seminars or you'll go to seminars, probably both. And it's a lot of good information to learn from these guys about how to get the most information and value out of a seminar.
Yeah, in fact, even on top of that, I asked Jake some questions about just mat culture and open mats, and he had some very interesting things to say about creating the right culture and welcoming visitors. So definitely stay tuned, even if you can't make it to the Omaha-Palooza. Yeah,
and you texted me and back and forth communicating with Jake, and Jake told me he was going to talk some trash on us, and so you kind of set him up with a softball. Listen to the interview, and we'll talk about whether he hit the softball or didn't even take a swing at it. We'll have to make a note to comment about that question in particular.
Yeah, so you definitely can't miss it if Jake's going to take pot shots at Byron.
And or Gary.
And or Gary.
But we do, so on the BJJBrick Extra, it's a little different format than the typical episode. The typical episode, we include a quote of the week, and we also have an article. We have a tip of the week. Man, we keep calling it tip of the week. Tip of the extra, or extra tip.
Okay, Byron, you're taking us down the wrong path.
But basically, we'll give you a tip of the step. We'll give you a tip, and I'm falling apart here, guys, about jiu-jitsu, and hopefully you can take it on the mat with you and learn and use it to your advantage. The tip this week, man, I'm struggling. The tip this episode is that you look around your training room and try to identify what parts or elements of people's games are like extremely good, and utilize that in your training. And we may not all, in fact, most of us don't have world-class competitors on the mats with us. But there are parts of the people's games on the mats that may not be world-class, but that are very good, top-notch, or at least the best in the room, because by definition, everybody in the room, one person has the best half guard in the room. One person has the best butterfly guard in the room. Don't always avoid these parts of their games. Work with them a little bit and tell them, pay them a compliment. Gary, you have a great half guard. You know, either you're going to sweep me with it, or you're going to Kimura me, or you're going to get me in a guillotine. Like, there's some things that Gary's going to always do with a half guard. So I could try to avoid that, which typically I do a lot of that, just trying to stay out of his half. Or I could occasionally get in there and ask him, okay, give me a few tips to work with here. Still do what you're doing, but tell me when I majorly mess up. And that way, my half guard passing game gets better. My understanding of the half guard game gets better. So I think we all are guilty of this. You see somebody who's got a killer blank part of the game. Then you approach that with, I will avoid that part of their game to the best of my ability, which that's valid too, to take the game where you want it to go. But if you always do that, you're really missing a great training opportunity to have to work within great areas. And if I work with Gary to help pass his half guard, I know that you have to have a very good half guard in order to hold me in it and to work effectively, because I worked with Gary. And if I always avoid Gary's half guard and then end up in half guard, well, I'm really fighting from a territory that I don't have much knowledge in. And so just look around your room, kind of evaluate who's good at what, and then, pay them the compliment of, hey, you've got a great butterfly guard. Help me learn how to pass it, or to not get swept or guillotined from your butterfly guard. And most teammates will be more than happy to A, receive that compliment, and B, help you out a little bit.
I like this tip, Byron. I would even take it a step further and say sometimes it's a more of a long-term plan, and you actually have to help your training partners develop their A game. You move to a new town, you're purple or brown belt, and the only school around has a bunch of white belts and a few blue belts, and it's even more challenging to find those students like you're talking about with an A game that can challenge you. Find out what your training partners are working on and just kind of voluntarily let the match go there sometimes. If somebody's working a spiral guard, let them get their grips, let them get their foot on your bicep, and then start working and let them play a little bit. And the better they get at it, the better it will force you to, or the more it will force you to defend and to figure that side of the equation out.
Yeah, I really like that, Joe. putting yourself, let somebody work that move, and you're being putting yourself in that position, it's only going to make you better, seeing where the person's going offensively, seeing what you need to do defensively in it, how to not get put in that position, how to break grips or whatever you need to do and get out of there. So that's a good piece of advice.
And if you want a little bit more advice and you're in your first year of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we have an audiobook for you called Your First Year of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It is produced, directed, and acted out by me. It's $11.99. It's very similar to a podcast. It's a little longer. I think it's about 2.5 hours long. And I will try to help you your first year, get you on the right path, get you doing the techniques that are going to be wise moves to be working on. I think that's a big one. That's probably the longest chapter is the technique chapter. And yeah, it's an audiobook. I'm not literally showing you techniques. That's the job of your instructor. But I help you focus on certain areas of your game and eliminate some of the frustrations. And, should you be doing this technique or that technique, I do have some recommendations on what techniques are more valid for your first year. The great thing is, if you do the right techniques your first year, you'll be doing the same techniques your 4th year, your 8th year, your 20th year on the mat. Some of these techniques you do forever. And it's just because you're getting better, it just doesn't mean you abandon these. Sure, we have parts of our games that we pick up and we let go, but a lot of the black belts we've interviewed have been doing basically the same game their entire jiu-jitsu career and developing that. And if you kind of start with a good, strong spot, you get more of those techniques you're likely to be able to keep and really develop and get to that elite level.
It's crazy, Byron. You're talking about, the basics, doing the same thing for many years, year 1, year 2, up to year 20. And what I find sometimes is something that I learned right off the bat is one of the most basic moves, thing that we need to do for a specific move is sometimes I forget it. And I may be doing something a little bit differently, let's say 5 years later, and it's not working as great. For some reason, I may have trouble with it. And then all of a sudden I go back and brush up, maybe watch a video on it again, and everything changes. And, kind of what has happened to me that kind of brought that to my mind is, I'm better attacking the left leg, my opponent's, or on my left side, which would be my opponent's right leg on my favorite move, which is a straight ankle lock. But my training partner's knee is kind of messed up, my main training partner, so I always have to attack his other leg. And I'm not as good on that side, and I'm getting so much better because, just working that side. But I've noticed, I'm having trouble, as Roli says, the power source. My power source isn't as good on that side. And, I was just missing some basic things. So I went back and I watched, there wasn't a Roli video, but it was Josh Hayden. I watched Josh Hayden talking about finishing his straight ankle lock. And, it's just a basic thing of getting totally to my side, kind of looking down, and then, hooking up my power source and then going from there. And that's, it made the total difference. Like all of a sudden, after watching it, I went back to doing it, which is the very first thing I ever learned on an ankle lock from Roli. And it's funny that I missed, I forgot that point, and then I started doing it again, and it was just perfect.
Okay, let's get on with the interviews this week. We're going to play them back to back to back. First up will be Jake Fox. Then we'll have Tim Sledd, and we'll finish off with Roli Delgado. These were fun interviews. They all three had some really smart and eye-opening things to say, so stay tuned.
He is the most interesting grappler in the world.
One time, during a bridge, he passed gas, and the price of oil went up 10% a barrel. He defends a double leg blast with one leg. He has fought Cletus 3 times at the dinner table. All 3 fights started with Cletus walking over and ended with Cletus limping back.
I don't always listen to podcasts, but when I do, I prefer the BjjBrick podcast. Stay sweaty, my friends.
I have on the line with me Jake. Jake is a black belt. He owns Fox Fitness, and he'll be hosting an event for us coming up in June. How you doing today, Jake?
I'm doing just fine, Joe. It's nice to actually get to meet you instead of just hearing you on the podcast.
Yep. Yeah, we've said before on the podcast that I joined just recently, so I haven't met Gary and Byron yet. I haven't met Jake yet, but that's all going to happen in June.
Yeah, so looking forward to that. June 22nd, 23rd, and 24th in Wichita, Kansas. It's really the BjjBrick Jiu-Jitsu vacation camp, but Wichita's not exactly a destination location, but it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Before we get into the camp too much, Jake, can you give us a brief introduction? Tell us a little bit about the history of your school and what you got going on there in Wichita.
I came up as a white belt with Byron and Gary. We all started out under the same guy, and it was back when jiu-jitsu was practiced in garages and back rooms of warehouses and shops and basements, and you were just lucky to find videos and people with a little bit of grappling knowledge to teach you what they know. And we kind of, the primary black belts at our school, we have 5 now. Jake Smith, Byron Jabara, myself, we all started under John Castillo, and through different circumstances, we kind of all parted ways. I went to try my hand fighting MMA. Byron stuck around with Johnny, and Jake's all different work things come up, so he had trained at another school that offered classes that fit his schedule better, and so we all stayed with jiu-jitsu and kept training. And we would keep in touch and occasionally get together to train, cross-train, stuff like that. And it got to a point where I was ready to open my school, and I did. And I was just a brown belt at that point. And Jake Smith was teaching at a school, and he ended up coming over, started helping out teaching at our school and getting together training again. And then Johnny kind of semi-retired, kind of shut down his gym. And so Byron and all those guys from Johnny's school came over, and so it was good to have Jake and Byron back. And so these guys I started out with as white belts were in the gym and kind of helping out teaching and stuff like that, and we all eventually became black belts. And so once I got to the gym ownership aspect of what we do, it made it harder for me to start doing things. So I haven't seen Gary as often as I used to, because I'd see him at the police academy. We would work with law enforcement officers, and a lot of the people that we've trained with over the years. It just gets a little harder when you're having to do all the mundane business stuff. So we've established this pretty solid program in Wichita. I think, personally, because I'm vested, I think we're the top school in Wichita, but that's, a little biased. But it's guys that I've trained with well over a decade. I first started training in 1999, right out of high school. Really didn't know what I was doing, couldn't really afford it. So it was that typical young guy, come and go. When I could train. When I couldn't pay for it, I wouldn't train. I'd be out working. And then about 2003, I really got, knuckled down and got dedicated. So now we have this established program. Fox Fitness has been open 6 years. And so we're just kind of kicking butt and having fun, and that's what we do. It's just we don't take ourselves too seriously, but we try to produce solid jiu-jitsu.
Nice. Did you do anything in high school, football or wrestling or anything to prepare you for jiu-jitsu, or you were just the average kid?
I was just average. I tried my hand at football because I like sports. I don't typically come from an athletic family. I've always been interested in martial arts. I kind of came up with the Karate Kid era, like a lot of guys. And most of our exposure of our generation is from the Karate Kid movies, and Chuck Norris and Jean-Claude Van Damme. So a lot of striking stuff. And the martial arts aspect of that era, everybody wanted to be a ninja and stuff like that. And so I tried doing a couple of different martial arts in high school, but nothing really stuck. I wasn't really impressed with doing like karate or taekwondo. And I really enjoyed judo, but it just never lasted in Wichita. And so I just kind of like stumbled upon Johnny in, like I said, about 1999, right after high school.
Nice. Okay. Hey, tell me what Gary and Byron were like as blue belts.
So, so one of my favorite things, I tell this a lot with the students when when you're training and you get these situations where you get caught a lot, and as you get more advanced, you get caught less, and so you start doing things where you put yourself in compromised positions. Well, I remember, especially with Byron, just having good hips, really solid triangle, and just working passing, just get triangle and triangle and triangle and triangle. And this guy would always triangle me, and it was something that's so simple with my passing. He's like, yeah, when you do this, all I do is just suck this arm in. I was like, oh, it's really that easy. That's how you're beating me. Yeah, it's just this little thing. And it took me a long time. And that's like a lot of things in jiu-jitsu. It just takes time. With that, there was a couple of things. Byron has always kind of been kind of cutting edge as far as guys I know who stays on top of like what's hot in jiu-jitsu. Like he's like, hey, let me show you this, or what do you think about this? And he'll show me some different things. It's kind of interesting. Or if I have a question about something I saw on the internet, he's one of the first guys I ask, hey, have you seen this? What do you think about this? And he's just always been, really solid technically. Gary, my favorite memory of Gary as a blue belt is since he's a little bit older than me, and he's got this baby face. I just never put two and two together that he was, he was older than me. I just thought he was a guy a few years older than me, and he was always just hurt, and I felt bad because back then there was just a ton of big dudes that traded at Castillo's place. And I was 190 pounds, and I was one of the smaller guys. And Byron and Gary were the smallest at one point. And, they're both about 175, 180. And Gary always seemed hurt. And I just felt bad because, like, the guy was really good. And he's like, oh, I got to miss, like, tweak something. And it's amazing because them being the smaller guys, and they're not even really that small, but being the smaller guys in that situation, I think that's why they're so proficient technically compared to like, a brute like me. So, it's just one of those things that I think's kind of nice having them as mentors and training partners early on in my jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, they're great guys for sure. And been handing out jiu-jitsu knowledge for a long time. So, Jake, let's talk about the weekend. Friday night is open mat. What can we expect when we show up Friday night?
We did something similar to this last year. It was, and the idea was to try to get together with a bunch of our friends. We went to a campground and ran it out for the weekend. And it was a good opportunity to kind of come together with different people from outside of just even our own city. And so the open mat section was just something more for registration, get everybody settled in. And we ended up just having a blast, just, beating the crap out of each other and cracking jokes and getting to know each other a little bit better. Because a lot of the people that were at the last year's camp were people within the state that we kind of knew, but we didn't really know well. So we're trying to model that same concept this year, that as people are coming in, I know sometimes work schedules, especially because some people will be coming in Saturday, that it's just really laid back and an opportunity to sit around and, if you want to roll or drill or whatever, just get to play and have fun and train with somebody you've hopefully never trained with before.
And if you bring a gi, someone will put one on and train with you. If you want to go no gi, that's fine too, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, it's an open mat, and that's what we do. I mean, the one thing that, like, we had open mat earlier today, and two of my guys showed up no gi, and they didn't even bring their gi because typically we roll no gi. Well, we got guys starting to train for Masters World in August and some bigger tournaments coming up in the summer. So it's like, guys, you got to be ready to train for whatever. And so that's kind of what we hope here is with open gi or with open mat, that guys will show up with whatever and be down for whatever. Take your gi off. You want to roll around no gi, put your gi on after you do some no gi rounds. It's just it's a free for all.
Man, that sounds fun. That's good. Tell me, you got a kids seminar during this too, right?
Yeah. So Friday night's open mat, just an opportunity to kind of hang out and do some jiu-jitsu. Saturday morning we'll have a kids seminar with Tim Sledd. I'm really looking for. That's actually the thing I'm looking forward to the most. I know it sounds kind of terrible. I never trained enough for myself, but the stuff that really gets me going right now is seeing how other people teach kids. That's like what I enjoy about jiu-jitsu right now is teaching kids.
Yeah, that's funny because that's one of the things I thought I was looking forward to a lot too. Have you done a kids seminar before? They don't seem to be nearly as common as seminars for adults.
Yeah, well, when my coach comes in, or Andre Manchiero, we always try to do a kids seminar just so he can see how the kids program's doing. Trying to show him what we've been working on with the kids and their progression. But also so that the kids can meet the guy that, we're under. And it's a good opportunity for me to see how he interacts because he's got stellar kids programs. In the seminars I've done, I've only done one kids seminar, and it went pretty well. It's kind of small. It was the first time I'd done it. It was a different element than what I was used to with adult seminars I've conducted in the past. And so with Tim, I know I've talked to him a little bit on Facebook. I'm really looking forward to seeing some of the concepts he brings to the table just from listening to him describe jiu-jitsu and talk about it. I want to see how he conveys his ideas to that audience. So that's one of those things that, I'm sure he's going to do a good seminar for the adults too. And I'm sure Roli's going to show some awesome leg lock stuff. I've had him out 3 times before. He's always done awesome stuff for us. But the kids seminar is what I'm really ready to nerd out about.
Yeah, I'll definitely come and watch that myself. And so then Tim will be teaching later on that day a seminar for the adults, correct?
Yes. So we'll do the kids seminar in the morning and then take a short break, get the kids out of the way. And then we'll do the first adult seminar will be Tim. He'll be in the gi, and he's going to be doing about 2 hours on that. And, we have a little bit of space in case he goes over. It's a window for guys who want to train a little bit in between sessions. And then we'll have Roli in the afternoon for no-gi. He's going to do some illegal leg locks, all of his stuff. Again, I've had Roli out several times to my place, been to several of his seminars at other friends' gyms. He just knows his stuff, and that's what I'm looking forward to as far as just for no-gi stuff is, my game's been a lot of leg locks recently. And then Sunday it's you. Pressure's on. You and Byron and Gary are going to show a few things to us.
Yeah, I've turned the pressure over to Byron. We're letting him take the lead on that. I wanted to back up, though, and give you an opportunity to talk about Tim and Roli a little bit more. I haven't listened to or watched Roli as much as I've paid attention to Tim, but I really like Tim's style. As a sales pitch, what would you tell the listeners that is unique about Tim Sledd and the way he brings information to the mats?
I think he's got a nice style, especially like listening to some of his thoughts on pressure. A nice way of describing things that conveys his details to a different audience than just kind of like going through steps 1, 2, and 3. I think now as a black belt, details become so much more important, and that's what I'm kind of looking forward to seeing with some of his stuff. I had requested, I don't know what he's going to show, I'd requested some stuff on his thoughts on pressure after listening to the episode. I can't remember the exact number. Byron gave me the links to all of Tim's stuff, and I put it on our event page. But the episode on pressure, I really want to kind of see some of that in the flesh and feel some of that in the flesh. Maybe I'll regret saying that after he does it. But, that's the type of stuff I really enjoy. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm not as familiar with him from like a personal standpoint like I am with Roli. So that's kind of like one of the things, along with the obviously the kid stuff we were just talking about.
Yeah, I like the way he approaches the concepts and just the whole game. I'm looking forward to just talking to him off the mat, I think, as much as I am to training with him. Yeah.
And that's a little bit of conversations with him and Byron, and that's where I kind of hope to get to know him a little bit better as well.
Yeah. So you've had Roli out several times. Tell us a little bit about his teaching style and what he's going to bring.
Like the first time we had him come out was for the legal leg lock stuff. I think it helped that a couple of our guys have been to one of his seminars before, so knew a little bit about format. And then a lot of our guys were familiar with his app at that point. And so he's just, again, he's really good about structure as far as teaching. So even when he's come out to do no-gi heel hook stuff before, and it was just kind of coincidence that we had him out a week before they had one of the other gyms in town had, not Gordon Ryan, I can't remember, but the other heel hook guy from Donna Hair Squad, and it was really nice having Roli out a week before, because he gave like a really cool fundamental way of teaching heel hooks. So I know everybody was going over the following week, or several of our guys went over the following week, and there was just a ton of beginner-ish type people at that seminar, because the guy's a name. He's one of the Donna Hair guys, and I think that him being able to teach was difficult for people who are less exposed, and our guys who had done Roli the week before had already had a little bit of exposure to like fundamentals and really solid entry-level instruction, that they were able to benefit from this like higher level heel hook guy. And so that's what I like about Roli is that he's very systematic about, the approach of, starting with here and grips and, going into next body position, and then, finally getting to the finish and explaining, how important all these steps are. So, when I've gone to other leg lock seminars in just recently with him, he's still kind of teaching that same basic breakdown, but now he's evolved, since the app's evolved, since, the game's always evolving, that now he's doing like more with like various entries and stuff like that. And depending on the crowd, if everybody's got, these steps 1, 2, and 3 down, then let's start working on some details and steps 4, 5, and 6, and some of the other stuff too. And so that's one of the things that's kind of nice, is that his systematic approach is really layered, and it benefits kind of everybody from a novice to an experienced guy.
Yeah, I like that approach to instructing for sure. You kind of touched on something that's good advice for the listeners. If you're going to a seminar, it's worth your time to learn the basics of at least the position. You usually know what you're going to a seminar for, and if they're using single leg X or something to do foot locks, and you're not familiar at all with how to get the single leg X, you're not going to get as much out of the seminar.
That's one of the things that was awesome, because I got a lot out of that seminar, and I'd already had, I got a lot out of Roli's seminar the week before, just because, I picked up a couple of details about body position. That was a big thing, because I'd already had a lot of exposure about the grip stuff, and had tweaked even like some basic straight ankle stuff from Roli from that to my heel hook game, and then taking some details on body position. So when I went to that seminar the following week, I got a lot out of it, but I was working, just being polite, I was working with a brand new guy from the other gym, and I asked him how long you've been training. He's like, a month. Dude, have you even done an ankle lock? No, I haven't done any leg locks. I'm like, why are you at this seminar? Well, this guy's like supposed to be really cool. Well, yeah, he is, but dude, this is making me nervous. You're going to blow my knee out. Right. So, again, I think, without getting too much in the weeds, I think you're right. If you're going to somebody, especially somebody who's got a name for being, like very, very detailed in one area, very specialized in one portion of the game, you should at least have a basic grasp of that. If you're just going to a seminar of a guy and he's just showing kind of general stuff, then typically they're prepared for all levels of people coming in.
Yeah, and we'll put links with this episode of some of Tim's stuff and some of Roli's stuff. And Jake, you say you've already put some on the Fox Fitness page, so everybody will have an opportunity to get familiar with what they're going to teach before they show up.
Yeah, and that's it. I think, I mean, going back, I need to ask Byron, but I think Tim's probably been one of the guests that's been on the most, or at least where they've had to segment some of his interview stuff, because I know Byron's taken a real shine to just BSing with the guy about, jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he's been on at least twice, and one of them was a two-week episode. It went so long. It's easy to get tied up with someone like that and not get lost and forget where you're at with time. Jake, I'm looking at the at your website here and your little ad for the camp. Does it say something about burgers and beers or barbecue or something?
Yeah, we'll do, including the cost of the camp is Saturday night, just hanging out. And that's one of the things that is always kind of nice about it is, guys want to train. And last year, I've been to some similar types of camps before where, everybody comes for jiu-jitsu, obviously, and we'll get plenty of that in. But a lot of times guys just want to hang out, get to know some people, especially the jiu-jitsu community being what it is. That's probably the biggest selling point. I know we were talking before about one of the things that draws Gary back and keeps him in the game is the community. And I am a big proponent of that. And so afterwards, Saturday, when we get done, guys want to roll, they can roll as long as they want, but we'll have barbecue. We'll sit around, drink some beers, and spin some yarns and kind of just have fun and go until it gets dark. I mean, there's nothing to say we can't keep doing jiu-jitsu well into the night or just sit around, drink beer, and eat some smoked meats and just have a good time. So that's a big part of it too, is, again, the community aspect of it. Trying to provide guests, instructors that have something unique to show, and then on top of it, just being able to hang out and have some fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking at the cost, and, for somebody that's local and doesn't have a lot of extra expense getting there, this seems like a really good bargain. What is the cost, and how can people get in touch with you and make sure they got a spot?
So the cost of the camp is, for 3 days, $150. It's stupid cheap. We're able to keep the overhead low because it's at my academy. I mean, really, it's already a fixed expense with the overhead. I lease the space and have the mats and everything else. So we're able to keep it cheaper. Basically all we're doing is paying for the talent to come in, and that's what's kind of exciting about it. And one of the things, I network with some other gym owners across the country, and one of the coolest things I've ever heard from somebody who owns a gym was, he's like a brown belt, but he's a professional by day, and he's a co-owner in this gym. He's like, man, I own a jiu-jitsu gym, not to make money, but I get to have guys that I never get a chance to train with come to my gym and do seminars, stuff like that. I'm really looking forward to having Tim come out and get to know him. Maybe have him come out again in the future. But, like I was telling you before, I've had Roli out several times. And part of it's just, he shows great jiu-jitsu, but he's just a guy that, I'd probably sit around and drink beer with on the weekends if he lived here, And that's one of the cool things about it. So the cost of the camp being that reasonable is just because, the overhead's taken care of. So if you're a local guy, it'd be kind of, foolish to miss that opportunity. If you're coming from out of town, it's also incentive for you, because I know expense getting to Wichita is flights, not exactly an air hub. So, flights aren't stupid cheap, but it's, reasonable driving distance in the Midwest. And then as far as accommodations, there are decent hotels near our academy that are pretty cheap, about, $80, $90 a night. And then, if you want to go no-tell, motel and do something cheaper, they're a little bit further drive from where we're located. But, you can do something stupid cheap like that. And if you get to know some people in the gym, next year when we do it again, you can go crash on a couch. I know I got a couple of people staying with me that weekend that I know are coming from out of town that I know personally. They're just going to crash on my. So it's a cool opportunity. I try to keep it cheap because I think jiu-jitsu should be accessible to everybody. This is certainly some rich man's game, so you can come in and really just enjoy it.
Yeah, to get a seminar with two guys like Roli and Tim, and then have the extra open mat and the brick day on Sunday, that's a really great bargain. And Jake, I know I appreciate you offering the use of your gym and doing all the coordinating and putting all this together. And man, I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to meeting you too, and it's awesome as far as having all this stuff be able to kind of come around and come about, and like using the platform of the partnering up with the Brick Podcast. That was just kind of a thought that came together when I was in the early planning phases of it this year, because again, this is an opportunity to kind of help widen your audience and get more people interested. And for one of the funny things that I hear from some of my guys that travel for work is they'll go and where do you train? Fox Fitness in Wichita. Oh, you train with the BjjBrick guys? Like, well, yeah, Byron's one of the black belts there, and it happens. It's not like something that happens because we don't have so many guys traveling all the time, but it's happened for a small school. It's happened a ridiculous amount of times where I'm like, hey, so and so traveled for work, and the gym they dropped in said, oh, we listened to that podcast, and Byron's always kind of blown away, like, oh, really? Like, yeah, so it's a cool opportunity to kind of continue building on this. This is something I really support Byron and Gary and now you for doing, because I think how you give back to jiu-jitsu is a lot of ways, whether it's teaching or, run the business or fighting, competing. There's a lot of ways you can give back to the art and give back to the sport, and this is just another way to do it. So I've always been like really supportive of the podcast in that regard.
Yeah, that's really what it's all about, is giving back and just trying to spread the word and grow the community. So appreciate what you're doing, and I'll let you go, Jake, and we'll talk more between now and June 22, and I'll see you up in Wichita.
Okay, sounds good. Nice to meet you, Joe.
Okay, nice to meet you too, Jake. I'd like to welcome Tim Sledd to the BjjBrick podcast. Tim's been a guest before. He's a black belt under Andre Galvao. Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good. Hey, if I remember correct, is there a little bit of a backstory behind the name Small Axe?
Yeah, so Small Axe Jiu-Jitsu. So Small Axe is a Bob Marley song. Bob Marley and the Wailers. It was about 2005. I was driving back to Indiana from the Boundary Waters in Minnesota, driving through the night, just listening to music. Everybody in the car was asleep, and Small Axe by Bob Marley comes on, and I'm listening to it, and I was just like, man, that fits my jiu-jitsu philosophy. I'm a purple belt at the time, so what really did I know about jiu-jitsu philosophy? Well, whatever I did know, it sort of panned out to be true. And so I came back home and wrote down basically my philosophy of jiu-jitsu, and it just basically covered the lyrics of that song about fundamentals, and my sort of philosophy of fundamentals and how to stay sharp. And so I decided to name my team after it, and that's where Small Axe was born.
Yeah, so a small axe is really effective if it's sharp and it's used correctly, right?
That's right. That's right. In Jamaica, they have a phrase that says, a small axe will fall a big tree. And, I say it a lot to my students. I say, there's flavor of the day techniques that are essentially like chainsaws. They're really effective. They cut through, a lot of the people in your class or whatever, no matter what it may be, whether it's a crazy back take or a crazy, setup for a submission or a flying triangle, this, that, or the other. And much like a chainsaw will cut down a lot of trees, but when a chainsaw runs out of gasoline, you're left with a pretty ineffective or impotent piece of machinery. But an axe, which is very fundamental, you can cut down a whole forest with it. All you need is a sharpening stone. And I kind of view that as what the basic and fundamental concepts of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu are like an axe. If you spend your time honing that, sharpening those, they're going to carry you a long way. And so the core philosophy of my jiu-jitsu system is around fundamental concepts and techniques.
Nice. The first time I heard you mention that when you were on the podcast, it reminded me of an old wives' tale about two woodsmen that had a competition cutting down trees. And at the end of the day, the young fella knew he was going to win because he was cutting down trees all day, and he'd heard the old guy take some breaks here and there. And then when they tallied up, the old guy whooped him, and the young kid said, well, how did you fall so many trees if you were taking a break every couple hours? And the old guy said, when you thought I was resting, I was sharpening my axe.
Exactly. Very good. It's true.
So, Tim, we're going to be getting together in just a few weeks now up in Wichita, Kansas at the at Fox Fitness for a BjjBrick event. And I understand you're going to be teaching a seminar for the adults and one for the kids. Is that right?
That's correct. I can't wait. I'm so excited to be there. I've never taught jiu-jitsu or even trained jiu-jitsu in Wichita, so it's going to be a blast.
Nice. I wanted to ask you about the kids seminar. It must require quite a different strategy and a focus to teach a seminar for kids. This is going to be 2 hours. Do you have a plan for holding their attention? How do you approach this?
Sure. So I have a lot of experience teaching youth seminars, youth classes, and the big thing is first I try to build a rapport with the class. We always do a warm up, and part of the warm up is a game that sort of builds some rapport with them. They get to see that I'm just a big kid myself, and then I teach. I give them a roadmap of what we're going to be learning, so that they can kind of see the whole picture. It's not some, they're not wondering what's going on. We're going to be learning a system, and so they're going to see the system. Then we're going to work a few techniques. Then I break it up. I break up the monotony with a game or with an activity, and then we get back into the technique. And I usually surprise the students by having them teach at the end. And, throughout the class, I'm sort of watching to see who's getting it, who has sort of the confidence to sort of get up and lead. And then I usually pick those kids at the end to sort of say, all right, teach me how to do this. And for the kids that don't get called upon, that sort of makes them sort of take a deep breath, and they're like, oh, wow, these people are going to go out and do that. But it also builds their confidence because they say, yeah, I can see that, or, ooh, they missed this technique or this little detail. So it helps root the knowledge into their brains a little better than just sort of me getting up there and impressing them or scaring them, however I may, whatever the teaching style may be. If I really want to see how well they got the techniques down, and the best way to know is can they translate that to others.
Yeah, that's awesome. What type of techniques have you decided yet on what you're going to be teaching for the kids?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to show a collar sleeve system that I find to be very effective for adults and kids. I learned it from a black belt named Guto Campos, who's one of the big powerhouse coaches for the Atos team, but he's out of Brazil. He's in Brazil, and he produces all kinds of guys that win championships for the Atos team. They come out of his camp, and his collar sleeve game is just amazingly effective, super simple if you just think about some certain concepts. So I start with the kids because I do believe in jiu-jitsu needing to be a self-defense system. So we're not going to be doing punch blocks or kick defense or anything like that, but we're going to start from the feet with a takedown using the collar sleeve, and then we're going to we will work a few different positions from the collar sleeve from the bottom, because it's a great position for a smaller person to do against a bigger person, a weaker person to do against a stronger person. I really love the system because the female students, the girls that I've taught it to, get really good at it, and it's very effective.
So is this like a sleeve grip at the wrist and a cross collar grip, or the same side collar grip?
I go over the difference in the seminar because there are different strategies for it. I use same side collar grip versus cross collar grip, and I go over the reasons why in the actual seminar. And a lot of times it depends on the sort of the attacks that you're looking to set up. Keenan was the one that got me away from the cross collar grip. When I was training with him one time, I was trying to play Guto's collar sleeve with him. I was on the bottom, and he said, if you control over here, you have on the same side. He goes, you have my whole back and all of my neck controlled. If you're over here, you can pull over the shoulder, especially since you're pulling on the sleeve. He goes, you don't have as much control. So I really like the same side, but there are times where working the cross lapel with the wrist grip is important and functional. But for the kids program, it's same side collar, and then same side sleeve.
Nice. What kind of expectations should or do you have, or should parents or other coaches have, as far as what a kid's going to come out of this with? Is it more just inspiring and they pick up a few things, or do you think kids are old enough to really like grasp a technique in a day and run with it?
Well, I really believe that I would tell the parents that they should expect their children to gain a knowledge base of a system of attacks, and then what I do is I build the complexity. So it's a system. So the front part of the system is, of course, the simpler part. How you get there, how how you control, and then what are sort of your first options. So you'll have like the first technique in the system is going to be, when we're starting from our back, is going to be, perhaps like a simple sweep. And then when that sweep doesn't work, then we move into a different attack. And then when that attack fails, then we move into something else. We're building a chain of techniques off of reactions. So, it's most important that they learn the first one, because you want the first attack to be solid, super solid. So a newer jiu-jitsu practitioner, a youth student that doesn't have a day's worth of jiu-jitsu, I mean, they could be completely brand new to jiu-jitsu. They're going to learn a takedown. They're going to learn a gripping system and why to use a certain type of gripping system, and they're going to learn a way to get from the bottom to the top. Somebody who's practiced jiu-jitsu for 5 or 6 years is going to learn a very effective system that, a lot of high-level competitors at the adult black belt division use to attack, and they're going to learn a number of techniques that they can fire off in rapid succession, and it may be the first time they've seen the system put together like this.
Well, if this was what you're teaching to the adults, I'd be looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to watching you teach the kids, learn a little bit about this system and a little bit about teaching kids. Tell us what you got planned for the adults.
So I'm kind of torn on the adults right now. I believe that when Byron and I spoke earlier, I want to say that they asked that I teach some of my pressure concepts. I have a very heavy jiu-jitsu game, and I weigh between 175 and 185, depending upon, just the time of year and the weight I'm packing around. But, I'm not a big guy, but I'm known for my pressure. And I've put together and I've been doing for a number of years, a seminar series called Feel the Pressure, where I talk about concepts of body positioning so that you maximize your pressure, because I believe that, it's a great way to take a lot of energy out of your opponent while you conserve your own. I have a firm belief that jiu-jitsu is an oxygen deprivation game. So, if you think about it in the sense of sort of economy, I'm trying to run my opponent into a deficit while I have a surplus. pressure is just a great way to do that. So I'm not sure whether that's the direction they want to go, or I am using and have been teaching for a couple of years now a very simple half guard system that uses a lapel that is just it's cash money. It really is effective. I love to use it when I'm going against bigger, younger, stronger guys. I find it to be very effective. It has a great answer to the leg attack game that people are calling the honey hole. It has some options that you can do from there. So I know a lot of my students love it and use it. So I'm trying to decide whether I'm going to do the pressure or this lapel game. The lapel game is one that I went out in 2010 and trained with Ryan Hall and Seth Smith out at 50/50 Jiu-Jitsu out in Washington, D.C. And Seth was teaching the class, and he showed a version of this technique from shin to shin guard. And I played around with it and used that technique quite a bit. But then I started finding that it worked from half and quarter guard just as well. And I'm sure there are other practitioners out there that do this system, but I really wasn't taught the system. I kind of found it on my own through playing with the system that I learned from the guys out at 50/50. And so I love it. I teach it all the time. I've been sort of spreading it around my seminar circuit and getting great reviews from it.
Well, I know that Jake and Byron had mentioned the pressure, so they might be looking forward to that. My vote would be for the half guard. But whatever you bring, I'm sure it's going to be quality. I made a note for myself. I'm going to post to remind myself to ask you about that half guard game if that turns out to be what you don't teach. So
sure, yeah, I do remember them asking for the pressure stuff, but hey, I think I'm available for private lessons too.
Awesome. If you're going to teach the half guard, is there any prerequisite, like if a guy came with some tools already, they would get more out of it? Would you suggest looking at anything or doing any drills before the seminar?
No, I mean, so basically I can sort of articulate that my half guard tends to start with a shin shield half guard, or some people call it the Z guard. I think I've heard it called 93 guard or whatever. There's lots of different names for it, but I tend to start from that position. So if I do the half guard workshop, if I'm going to do a workshop on my lapel half guard, then I will articulate and I will explain why I choose to start with this version of half guard for purposes of space management, counterattacks, things, grip breaking, and all of the things that I believe are important. I don't teach like a technique and then have it operate in space alone. I really like to draw techniques into sort of the concepts of why they work. And I'll tell you that where that really struck home for me was before it was called the John Wayne sweep. I was training I went out and trained in California back in, I don't know, was it 04, 05 maybe. And I went to Sean Williams School when it was Hollywood BJJ. And he taught a simple sweep from half guard, but he didn't teach the sweep. He taught the why the sweep would work, and so then the John Wayne sweep started becoming popular. And I was just like, yeah, but everybody who was teaching it was teaching like a technique, and they weren't teaching why the technique would work. So I would watch the students or watch other people try it and watch it fail, and I'd be like, that makes sense. So I started saying, well, no, when I teach a technique, I want people to understand why the technique works, because different body types are going to have different places where grips need to go, or different points of control that need to happen. But if we're thinking about what makes the mechanic of the technique work, then you can operate in the concept easier. So I'll teach the technique, but I'll teach why the technique should work, and then if it's not working, how you address that. Because I really believe in understanding it more than just repeating it.
Nice. I appreciate that, man. That's Jiu-Jitsu makes a lot more sense when you use it as a system and not a collection of random techniques, for sure.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
Good. Are you going to be up only for Saturday, or will you be there for the weekend, Tim?
I think I'm there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Oh, good. Okay, so anybody thinking about coming, they'll get plenty of opportunity before and after sessions to pick your brain.
Absolutely. That's what I'm there for.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'm gonna let you go. I got Roli coming on next. Appreciate you taking a few minutes out to give us a preview, and I look forward to seeing you up in Wichita, Tim.
Man, I can't wait to be there. I hope everybody takes advantage of this awesome opportunity just to get together and to train. I mean, Roli is a fantastic competitor and teacher and coach. I remember when I was, I want to say, a blue belt. I was in Nashville for a tournament, and Roli competed there, and I was just like, man, this guy's good. And then, he's produced a world champion, I believe, or at least I can't remember if Hillary won worlds or not, but definitely world-class competitors have come out of his gym, and he's a wealth of knowledge, so I'm excited to share the mats with him for sure. Yeah,
and I think Jake said that besides him and Byron, I think they got several other black belts at their school. I think the talent pool is going to be pretty deep for the open mat and the free rolling, and I'm looking forward to it.
It's going to be awesome, and I want everybody to know that if you're a white, blue, purple belt, you're gonna gain a lot from what I'm bringing, because I'm there to answer your questions. So I'm not there to put on a display of what I know. I'm there to help you learn an effective way of either smashing people with good pressure, or getting out from underneath somebody who's passing through your guard. And I can't wait to train with the kids.
Awesome. Okay, thanks again, Tim. Well, we'll see you in a few weeks.
All right, thank you.
Welcome, Roli Delgado, to the BJJBrick podcast. How you doing tonight, Roli?
I'm good, brother.
Good. I'm doing good. I was looking online to get some information for an intro for you, and I ran across this on BJJ Heroes. Rolando Delgado, commonly known as Roli Delgado, is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt and grappling pioneer in the state of Arkansas, U.S., where he co-founded the Westside MMA, a former professional mixed martial artist for the UFC. Roli is also known for his work as a jiu-jitsu instructor and for his strong influence in the development of the straight ankle lock game for sport jiu-jitsu in the early part of this decade. How's that sound for an introduction?
It's a dream come true to be living this life, man. I never thought I'd kind of find a niche with leg locks. I never thought I'd get to do all the cool things I've gotten to do through mixed martial arts and jiu-jitsu, and that BJJ Heroes link is super cool, and just to be on that site is another privilege as well. So it's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, it was awesome to run across that. Before we get into what you'll be teaching at the seminar, tell me a little bit about your school and what you got going on there.
Man, I've got a gym with the very first person I started training with, my business partner and coach, Matt Hamilton. And we've owned the gym for 12 years together. It's grown a lot. We have over 300 students, the best students in the world. I have a really big jiu-jitsu program here, and I just love what I do, man. It's a great environment. We train really hard, but we're still able to run it like a business. And I really just feel like we have that good balance. We have new mats, a nice facility, but we don't have air conditioning, so we're still kind of gritty and tough. And like I said, I just love my students. I've got a bunch of tough guys and girls there, and it's just a great place to be. We've got a really good kickboxing and MMA program as well. I've started to move away from that part of the gym to focus more on the sport jiu-jitsu and trying to continue to develop that. It's just always more. So I, have a lot of guys doing it, and I just want more and more and more, and I want to keep developing the good students that I have and make them great black belts. So we're just, 12 years in and still passionate.
As an MMA gym with multiple disciplines, do most of your students train a little bit of everything, or do you have a few students that, I'm just here for the kickboxing or I'm just here for the jiu-jitsu? How's that look?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We probably have somewhere around 15 or 20% of people doing multiple programs, if I had to guess. Most people there's only so many hours in a day. We work a lot here in America, so it's hard for the average person, especially with a family, to do everything. So you just kind of find that one niche, and that's pretty typical for the gym. People will do MMA, kickboxing, or jiu-jitsu.
Do you? So you said you're moving more towards the jiu-jitsu part of the program. Would you still encourage a guy that was doing almost strictly jiu-jitsu to take in an MMA class now and then to, stay a little more well-rounded? I find that when you do jiu-jitsu and you introduce punches, it keeps your jiu-jitsu honest.
I agree with that statement 100%. I definitely support people doing some MMA. I think it's a good reality check. For me, when people talk about the difference between self-defense jiu-jitsu and sport jiu-jitsu, I just am like, whatever, train jiu-jitsu. And if you want to do self-defense, train some MMA. And that's going to give you, that's real self-defense. Granted, we're not fighting and poking each other in the eyes, but it's, you get to those dominant positions with strikes and jiu-jitsu and wrestling put together. So, if people, I recommend it, but at the same time, for some of my real serious competitors, I don't even want to take that day away from them to do MMA training or if we're getting ready for tournaments. I mean, that's what we're doing. You don't see like college wrestlers going and putting gis on to practice judo. It's like, I'm not saying they couldn't get something from it, but I wouldn't want to, I agree with that statement. I think overall people should do that. But at the same time, I see jiu-jitsu as a sport and that has some great self-defense applications, and I'm perfectly okay being a sport jiu-jitsu guy. But then again, I have an MMA background behind me, so obviously I don't feel the need to do it anymore. I've proved my toughness or whatever. But if somebody wants to be ready to defend themselves, they absolutely should do a little MMA type grappling and get a reality check, because obviously they're not going to bolo somebody in the street.
Yeah, I've always felt that way, that guys should do a little MMA or a little boxing, but I'd never really considered the standpoint of somebody that's hardcore training for a competitive career, and I would totally agree with what you said. You don't see football players decide to go out and practice a little basketball during the season. It's all about football when they're playing football, so I can understand that from a jiu-jitsu standpoint as well.
Yeah.
So, Roli, tell me a little bit about what you're going to be showing us at Fox Fitness on June 23rd.
Well, there's so much jiu-jitsu that I'm learning and practicing all the time, but the reality is people can train with great black belts in almost every state now. So I'm almost depriving people of an opportunity to learn the system that I've been lucky enough to learn and help develop. So I'm going to show leg locks. That's what people want to learn from me. And when people work with me for a long time, I get an opportunity to work some of the other parts of jiu-jitsu. I have, an amazing coach and an amazing network of black belts and grapplers that I work with. So, I was at Pedigo Submission Grappling, this past week, with Bryce Mitchell, who's on the season of The Ultimate Fighter. He's, one of my students, and he's a student of a friend of mine, but I'm definitely one of his coaches as well. And I learned a lot over there. It had nothing to do with leg locks, and I was coming back and sharing some of the stuff that I learned there. But at the end of the day, man, when I'm out of town and people get a chance to work with me, they want to learn leg locks. And as much as I want to show some other cool stuff, I'll be showing some of the stuff that I've been continuing to develop. You know, I've been competing a lot these last 2 years, and I'm you know, winning a lot of matches with leg locks. And so there's some nuances in there. I've worked out at Jake's place a few times and shown a lot of stuff there, and I'll be showing a lot of updated versions, entries, and I have a leg lock that I call the Osage and the Crunch that I've hit twice in the past few matches I've had. It's a leg lock. I got it in the Fight to Win, and I also got it at the Dallas Open. And it's a move people haven't felt or seen before, even at the black belt level. So I'll be definitely showing my transitions into that move and the move itself, and some of the nuances of, you know, my one leg X pull and things of that nature.
Yeah, speaking of the one leg X guard, I went to a seminar 6-8 months ago. It was heel hooks, but it was entering from single leg X guard, and I noticed quite a few students who weren't familiar with that, and it doesn't allow them to get everything they could out of this seminar when they're struggling with the entry. Are there any prerequisites, anything you would suggest people work on prior to coming and training with you that will help them get right to the footlock game and pick up a little bit more?
Yeah. I mean, you know, this, you know, for my style of leg attacks, I prefer single leg X. So any single leg X entries, they can look up Marcelo Garcia videos. They can work any single leg X stuff. That's my main medium for isolating a leg and attacking the ankle. And it's a strong sweep game for me. So any single leg X stuff, that definitely would want to do some of that. But I tend to run like a little warm up based around like swooping into single leg X that anybody can get. So, you know, I don't think it'll be a big problem if somebody hasn't really played that position much. I've had people like that, and they've still gotten a lot out of the seminar. So I kind of run a warm up to get the gross motor skills going, and then fire off with a little more fine details after that. So if they want to get ready, you know, just any single leg X stuff, like Marcelo Garcia is the king. So you can see his entries and him using the sweep. And then that's kind of been like a major platform for me, you know, taking the jiu-jitsu entries and then applying like sambo and catch wrestling finishes. And that's pretty much how I've come up with my system. I don't do a lot of double outside, you know, what they're calling ashigurami now. That's not my game, but we'll be doing some single leg X.
Nice. When you do a seminar, especially somebody coming in, maybe they're not familiar with foot locks, they're maybe newer to jiu-jitsu, but what's one thing you hope they really take away from training with you for a day?
Well, yeah, that's an easy question to answer. Basically, that understand how to, like, the basic concept of isolating somebody's limb and then using your whole body to put pressure on the joint and get the tap. You know, basically learn how to use your body as one unit, kind of like a judo throw. You know, your hands and your hips are working at the same time, your footwork and your grips. And so you're like trying to learn how to pull them correctly and use your hands, and your feet kind of go, you know, stupid. And then you kind of get your hips right, but you're not pulling them correctly with your hands. But when you execute both things at the same time, the sweep is beautiful, or the throw, I should say, is beautiful. It's the same thing with the ankle locks. You know, my app really did well, and it you know, I sold a bunch of them, and people responded great, you know, really well to it. And one of the things was just talking about like how to develop power sources and where the power's coming from, and how to grip it in a way that allows you to use your body to get the tap, not just your arms, things of that nature. So people hopefully will learn how to use their body in a more efficient manner.
So you're not just attacking the foot with your hands. That's almost a fair fight, but you're basically attacking a small joint or a small part of their body with your entire body.
Exactly. I'm using my feet, you know, so my legs, I'm using my hips, I'm using my back as well, and then of course my bony arms to lock the ankle in place. So I'm utilizing every part of my body cohesively, and so you're just multiplying, the power. So rather than like pushing and then using your hips and then leaning back, I'm doing all those things at once. And that's why, you can get on Flow Grappling and see some of my recent matches at like Masters Worlds or Pans, and you can see, when I get an ankle lock, I typically, and there's exceptions for sure, I've hit ankle locks and not gotten the tap, but oftentimes I'm getting the tap really quickly. It's not like they're struggling and then they decide to tap. It's, I hit it and they tap, and that's that.
Nice.
I do want to say, I'm not cocky. I've gotten people's foot and they've not tapped before. So I cranked on Diego's, Cervea's foot at the Atlanta Open this year and had it belly down, and his foot was really flexible and he didn't tap. So, that was a learning experience. I have some adjustments I wish I would have made, and I'll make those adjustments the next time I face him. He's a great competitor, but I don't want to make I don't want to pretend that, if I grab your foot, it's over. It's definitely not, but more often than not, I get a pretty quick tap.
That kind of makes me think about defense a little bit. What's the one thing somebody can do when you're trying to play a footlock game that's going to throw you for a loop? What's something I could do that's going to derail your footlock game?
Well, there's two things. One is you should know how to, you should not let me isolate your leg. I mean, if like my coach Danielson Pimenta is a master at not getting put in footlocks with me. I mean, I just can't isolate his leg. So that's the main thing. If you're positionally, like if your passing is strong and you understand the mechanism of isolating a leg, most of the time it's a form of kick through from some form of a butterfly, whether it be a shin on shin or half butterfly or full butterfly. Those are your most common entries. Of course there's some advanced stuff people are doing now where they're inverting and shooting up into the honey hole and, entering into the honey hole from leg drag positions, more so in no-gi. But that's the first thing. Now, if you let me isolate your leg, it's going to be hard to throw me for a loop. But if I isolate your leg, then you attack the entanglement. You don't attack the ankle lock. As far as the defense is concerned, you attack my isolation, my ankle lock, my leg entanglement. You have to attack that. You've got to defeat that to free your leg. If you're just hand fighting me, it's better than nothing, but I don't feel like you're treating the symptom, not the cause of the problem.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Awesome. Hey, are you going to be there only for your seminar, or are you going to be able to be there for the weekend?
I'm going to be there for the weekend.
Good. So yeah, I was talking to Tim Sledd, and he said he'll be there for the weekend. So for the listeners, I think Tim will be there, Roli will be there. I know Jake and Byron will be there. And I think Jake told me there's multiple other black belts at his school. So I think the talent pool is going to be pretty deep.
Yeah, it's awesome, man. I'm excited to be there. I'm battling a wrist injury on my not my dominant hand, but my other hand. I've already had surgery on the dominant hand wrist. So I'm kind of bummed that my wrist is jacked up, but I've been off the mats for 2 weeks now, and I'm gonna, there's a good chance I'm just gonna put a brace on and make a cast with a bunch of tape, because it just kills me to not be able to train with so many awesome black belts, especially the guys up there. Jake's got a great thing going, a great environment up there. He's a great black belt as well, and Byron's awesome. I've trained with Byron, and man, God, it sucks to not be able to train and be injured. I tell all my students, if you're healthy, you better be competing as much as you can, because you always think you're going to do it later and something's going to happen and you're not going to be able to do it. So I'm going through that right now. My students are training really hard right now, and I'm sitting there coaching, trying to be disciplined and, let my wrist heal. But before, it's been 2 weeks and it still hurts. So I'm kind of like, if it doesn't start getting better soon, I'm just going to write it off and make a cast. And if it's going to be hurt, it's going to be hurt. Like, kind of like, screw it,
Yeah, I think every jiu-jitsu guy can tell that story. It's hard to stay off the mats even when it's the right thing to do.
Yep, exactly.
So, yeah, Okay, I won't keep you much longer, but I will say that, Gary Hall says on the podcast, not weekly, but fairly frequently, that your apps and your approach to the leg lock game changed his game. So there's a testimony there.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I really enjoy hearing stuff like that, and I'm just really glad that I had some great coaches, and I put that information out there because it's opened up a ton of doors for me, and I'm glad that it's helping people. I was somebody showed me that stuff, and it's helped me, and I'm happy to pay it forward.
Awesome. Okay, brother, it was nice talking to you, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Wichita, Kansas.
Heck yeah. All right. Thanks so much for the call, and have a great one. Look forward to training with everybody.
All right. We'll see you later. Thanks, Roli. Okay, well, those were fun interviews. Possibly the only disappointment in the 3 interviews. I pitched Jake Fox a softball. I asked what Byron and Gary were like at Blue Belt, and I was sure he'd have some dirt to spill, but he was, not surprisingly, had some very kind things to say about them. Guys, it sounds like you've been doing the same thing, and that thing is pursuing jiu-jitsu and working to share their knowledge for a long time in Wichita, Kansas.
Well, actually, we're a little broke because we paid Jake to say that. So I have to actually work overtime to make up for the difference.
Yeah.
Yep, he's a nice guy. We change as the years go by, but and so do people's memories. But it was cool to hear all 3 of the interviews, and man, it makes me more excited for the event that's coming up. If you're available to attend, it's going to be a great weekend. There'll be a link in the show notes. Check it out, especially if you're traveling. Jake's telling me this event. Jake's kind of running the whole event. He thinks it's likely to sell out. So if you're traveling, buy your tickets in advance. I hate to see somebody travel here and it's sold out. That would be very disappointing. So, buy them in advance. And we'll see you June 22, 23, and 24. And we do have some people traveling, and it's really amazing to see, father and son, Kevin's, both the same name, are traveling from Pennsylvania. That is amazing, guys. I hope you guys have a great road trip coming down, and I hope you have a great time on the mats. And we'll do everything we can to ensure that's happening. Gary, we got a question in this for the BJJBrick Extra episode here. Steven sent it in from Facebook. What do we have here?
So basically, Steven said, so I finally felt that I was getting some flow to my game and improving when pop, there goes my ankle. Now I'm sitting there for 2.5 weeks and I have a case of sadness because I can't train. Any advice for the injured reserve, especially during the tournament season? And Gary, one thing, yes.
I was going to say, do you remember just a moment ago you answered this question?
Yeah, a couple moments ago. But Stephen actually sent us this message on Facebook, and we answered, and we all have our own ideas. And one thing that I told Stephen, and this really helps me. And a lot of times when I'm out, I can sit at home, I can be down because I can't train, or I can show up at practice at the gym, when everybody's training. And I tell you, I learned so much just from watching or maybe coaching or teaching. But I notice one thing that happens when I do watch, I see a lot of little things that I may be doing wrong, kind of like what we were just talking about a minute ago, kind of going back to the basics. I see a lot of things that I'm missing, and, I can add that into my game. And what normally happens to me, let's say I'm out, as Steven is, for 2.5 weeks. I sit on the sidelines and I watch for 2.5 weeks. I show up, I keep the camaraderie going. As I say, for me, jiu-jitsu is a social aspect. Just by showing up and seeing all my buddies, it, gets the endorphins kicking and puts me in a good mood. But I'm watching, I'm learning little things. I'm healing up, my body's healing. And then when I come back 2.5 weeks later, 3 weeks later, I feel like I'm better. just, using my brain and seeing the moves and, the flows and where I should be or what, where my hand should be, where my hip should be, little ways to tweak my weight distribution. It makes me better. I may lose a little bit of cardio when I'm out. I try not to eat bad, but I always end up eating bad and, gain a little weight, lose a little bit of cardio. But that comes back quick. I think my technique gets a little bit better. So even though in the short run I look at it as a negative, that I'm going to be out and I can't enjoy my favorite thing, I keep showing up. I keep watching. I keep my mind in the game. I keep, my social aspect, hanging out with the teammates, try to help people out. And I come back stronger. And for some reason, for me, I always come back better if I take a little bit of time off due to an injury.
Another thing I would suggest as far as dealing with the sadness, and I know the feeling, keep things in perspective from a time standpoint. Every 10 years you do jiu-jitsu, that's like 1,020 weeks if I'm doing math right. And I could be way off, but
probably
you're thousands and thousands of weeks into your jiu-jitsu journey if you do it for a lifetime. So missing 2 weeks here and 3 or 4 weeks there, while it's disappointing in the big picture, it's not going to affect your journey a lot. Even in the middle of a tournament season, if you miss a tournament or two, that's just a couple tournaments out of 20 or 30 or 50 tournaments that you might enter in the next, 10 years or 15 years. So just keep a perspective and know that it'll be over soon and you'll be back to rolling full speed like nothing ever happened.
And Joe, you were talking to me about, the months. You were just talking about 10 years is, how many months of jiu-jitsu. And, one thing I did not know that Joe brought up, that you can take a jiu-jitsu guy and let's say you Kimura him and snap his arm in half. If that arm breaks through the skin, you can count the rings on the bone and find out how many weeks this guy has been training jiu-jitsu. And I never knew that till Joe told me, but thanks for the knowledge, Joe.
Yeah, and I think I said 1,000. I probably meant 500. It's 500 and something. It's still a lot of weeks, and missing a week or two here and there is, in the big picture, not that significant.
Yeah,
yep.
It'd be like, it's 52 weeks in a year, so 10 years it'd be 520. And then if you train 3 times a week, you're looking at 1,500 training sessions in 10 years.
How many seconds would that be if you train 2 hours a day for 52 weeks, each year?
What's really important is that in dog years, it would be 96.
Ooh, that's even better.
Wow.
Yep. Byron, what advice do you have for Steven who, heard a pop in his ankle and he's out 2.5 weeks?
Well, different injuries require different things. First off, tell your coach. Hopefully the person has more experience with dealing with. Some injuries are common, some are not. The ankle isn't the most dangerous place to get injured. I think when you hear a big pop in your knee, you're looking at going to your doctor and seeing what's happening. With the ankle, I think it's a little bit safer. Whether you go to the doctor or not, that's up to you. But I think you can get some good guidance on that from your coach and from describing the symptoms to maybe your teammates or somebody who knows a little bit more about that. And then, take some time off, do some off-the-mat study. It's good to, like Gary was saying, go to class and continue to watch, continue to be part of the team. And, just take it in stride, literally. It may be hard to do if your ankle's busted up, but know that this isn't permanent, and know that that we're going to get a little bit banged up from time to time. I don't think with this type of injury you're accumulating permanent damage. So let it heal, and you'll be back on the mats. And lesson learned, either find a little bit safer way to train with those. Talk to that person before you train with them again. Make sure that they're going to give you time to tap, or make sure that if you're in trouble, that they know that you are not wanting to get injured, and that you should, hey, and you're pretty much getting close to getting hurt here. I think sometimes with some of the leg locks, they don't really hurt that bad until stuff starts popping, and that's sometimes you hear you don't train new people with leg locks, and that's one of the reasons. There's not always a ton of pain involved until damage is done. Another reason is sometimes the escapes, if done incorrectly, you just end up doing damage instead of escaping correctly. And I guess I'm going on a little bit of tangents here, but yeah, hang in there. You'll get better. And I know he sent this a little while ago, and we actually answered this on Facebook with him, but figured we'd throw it to the show here. If you have a question, Facebook is a fine way to ask it, and hopefully we'll bring it back into the BjjBrick Extra Show. You could also email it to us at bjjbrick@gmail.com. Either one of those are pretty good.
I'd like to put another one in there, Byron, too. You kind of mentioned it, in your message when you talk to Steve, but, is there any way you can, be active? Like you're saying, hey, can you still move? But, maybe some swimming, keep your cardio up.
Oh, I did. Yeah, that was a good answer.
Yeah, keep it going. Maybe get in the weight room, work your upper body a little bit there too. Like you've always told me, Byron, no train, no gain. So, you're still training and you're making some gains.
Yep, that's good advice.
Gary, did you hurt your ankle this week?
No, I have not.
I did not hurt my ankle this week either, but guess what I did do?
Save a boatload of money on your car insurance by switching to Geico?
Negative. I pledged $2 a month on Patreon to a guy that's making skateboard videos up in Canada. He's got an interesting YouTube channel, and he's paying out of pocket to buy different wheels and trucks and, do reviews. And so he's looking for a way to raise a little money to keep his project going. And I pledged $2 a month to support his cause. I did that in part because we're Patreon supporters. And I appreciate the help that we get from our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much.
Yeah, if you want to do what Joe's doing to really a guy whose content you appreciate, and we're not a large company cranking out podcasts. We're three guys that are podcasting out of our houses and doing our best to make this grow and develop the best that we can. And we'll mail you out a 5-inch BjjBrick gi patch, also a BjjBrick sticker, and invite you to a private Facebook group where we'll a lot of times just chat about the show and tell you what's happening. And if you have any questions for upcoming guests, that's always cool to talk about there. That's really Patreon for us. It's been a tremendous boost to the show, and it's even saved the show one time, which is really came in handy at a time when you did it the most. I want to give an extra shout out to Gudrun, Mark, David, and Brad for being Patreon supporters. Thanks, guys, so much. Man, this has been great. I'm so glad Joe... we talk about Patreon. The reason why Joe has recording equipment and microphone and all this stuff is the support of our Patreon team. So this episode wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the supporters there. And man, you did a great job getting 3 interviews all rolled into one episode. A lot of information coming at us, and we're editing this because I really wasn't involved in recording at all. But editing this, man, I was getting super excited to get all these guys together. I'm excited, for the dynamic of watching Tim, learn from Roli, and watching Roli learn from Tim, and seeing how they run different seminars and teach different things. And man, this is going to be an awesome weekend of jiu-jitsu, and just got me more excited about that. We'll catch you guys on our normally scheduled program that airs Monday. We'll have Jonathan Thomas, and he's been I think this is his second or third time on the show. I think it's his third time. And man,
third time.
He does a great job explaining what we ended up calling the performance equation. What elements of this equation does it take to make you perform at your best? And he did, man, it was great to talk to him about this, because this is something that he's breaking down into a scientific method and really helping us figure out the keys to performing great on the mat. And we couldn't have a better guy to do that for us. So great episode coming up on Monday. Stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Train hard, train smart, get better. We'll see you on the mats, guys.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Volunteer to take this old bird out of her misery.
Cletus! Don't you dare say something like that about Mama.
Oh, no, you ain't got to protect me from Cletus. Come on, Cletus. Come on. Come over here. Come on, a short walk. Come over. Then you're going to limp back. You walk over, but you're limping back. Now don't let the gray hair fool you. I ain't no easy win, nigga. You know what
Thanks so much for checking out this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Check us out next week. And don't forget to check out the archives at bjjbrick.com or on this YouTube channel.